We have talked a lot about the guys who have been winning at Chargers training camp so far, but on today's show, we're going to talk about the players we want to see a little bit more from in week 2, including Isaiah Spiller.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogemeyer, and we've been covering the Chargers together now for 8 seasons, and this is our 6th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you guys, as always, for making this your first listen, and to make sure you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel, and listen to the show wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
Now that we got 1 week of training camp in the books, we're going to talk about some players that we want to see just a little bit more from. Guys like Isaiah Spiller, guys like Scott Matlock, and then we're going to get into the wide receiver 3 battle, one of the most heated battles of training camp so far. Is it Quentin Johnston? Is it Joshua Palmer there? And who is the greatest wide receiver of all time? Is it Keenan Allen? Is it somebody else? We're going to talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think in that it's definitely a 2-horse race between Keenan Allen and Lance Alworth, and it's a good conversation. They're both, better at different things, at least in their Chargers career. But this episode of Locked On Chargers is brought to you by eBay Motors. A championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. Same with your vehicle. So for parts that fit, head to eBay Motors and look for the green check. Stay in the game with eBay Guaranteed Fit. ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. All right, David, well, let's talk about the players we want to see more of in week 2 of Chargers training camp. And it's a little bit different because it's not like all of these guys haven't done anything, but it's just guys we want to see more of, especially, I think, with Isaiah Spiller, who, when I was out there the 2 days that I was out there, I thought he looked fine. I mean, one day, or both of those days were without pads on, but we haven't seen any big runs break. We haven't seen him on any highlight videos or anything like that. But I think for Isaiah Spiller, it's just, we want to see kind of some movement in the RB2 race, right? And I think we'll see a little bit more of that on Sunday when the Chargers have their first scrimmage. I'm really excited to see it. I'm really excited to see Isaiah Spiller.
Yeah, I think, Daniel, it's a little bit hard for the running backs, especially the guys that are in a battle, to kind of make some headway in practice. Especially in in their 7-7 and their 11-on-11. It's a little bit difficult to stand out in those situations because, let's be honest, they want to throw the ball down the field. They want to get more of that work in. I think in the scrimmage, that is when the running backs are going to be able to get more run, and I think that's where they have to. I mean, you want to simulate a very competitive environment where everybody's trying to set blocks. They're trying to use their vision and be able to make cuts and explode through holes. And I think we just want to see Isaiah Spiller make some plays and stand out and start putting some distance in between him and the guys in that running back room.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could also even throw Josh Kelly into this just because we haven't really seen a lot from Joshua Kelly or even Austin Eckler at that point. But we have to remember there's only been 2 days of padded practices. So things always seem to ratchet up a couple of notches when this team has their first scrimmage. And I expect to see that on Sunday, and I will be there on Sunday, so I hope to see you guys there. Me and my lovely wife will be watching the scrimmage and be back for a live show after to talk about it. But Isaiah Spiller, I mean, I think when I have seen him so far this offseason and in training camp, he looks in noticeably better shape. I didn't think he was out of shape last year, but I do think that this year he definitely looks in better shape, whatever that means, right? But I think it's more trim for sure coming into year 2, and I think it's just how far has the pass blocking come, right? Can he be the guy that's elusive and can break some tackles? We haven't really seen it because he had such a small sample size last year, which is why we're foaming at the mouth to see more of it this year. Because if you're talking about where the improvements are coming from in the running game and you're kind of not talking about Kellen Moore or the offensive line, the most obvious place to look would be Isaiah Spiller just because he was so little involved last year.
Underutilized,
Sure, but I mean, Josh Kelly also had his best year last year too, right? So he kind of earned that running back 2 role. We'll see which one of them can kind of put their stamp on it because Kellen Moore usually uses 2 running backs, but he doesn't often use 3 very much. So who would you go to next as a guy that you're really excited to see from this upcoming week?
Yeah, I mean, I think a guy who I expect more from just because the size is undeniable. It's Donald Parham Jr. I feel like just going through the first week of training camp, we've seen Donald Parham Jr. get bodied by smaller defenders, and I mean that's been a little bit of a theme so far. And
at least the last few days, right? I mean, all these red zone, talks that we've had about them being in the red zone, throwing it to guys like Donald Parham. I mean, I think you look at the Alohi Gilman interception for sure. Yeah. On that one too. So I mean, definitely recently that seems to be a kind of a trend.
Which, yeah, that's not a trend that I want to see continue. I think Donald Parham Jr. needs to use his size to box out defenders, get in the way. I mean, use that gigantic frame to make it very difficult for guys to get in front of you. I mean, you use the box out move, the Antonio Gates move. I mean, just get your body in front of them. Do not allow them to get in between you and the football. And I just want to see that, turn into more production. And, just that's what I expect from Donald Parham. I mean, it's just such a weapon, and I just want to see him get utilized and see him produce.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know what to expect from Donald Parham, right? He's never had more than 20 catches in a season. So it is year 4 for him with the Chargers, and you hope. I think the main thing is just, can you be a consistent red zone weapon, right? Yes. And we talked about the Chargers struggling a little bit over the past few practices in the red zone. So I think what you want is just, hey, be a consistent kind of dominant player down there in the red zone, especially in these practices, because you are way bigger than everyone else. I don't know if he can really use the box out move as well because he's way more of a slender body type than Antonio Gates, who was just a unit and was super thick, right? And also had all the basketball experience.
Of course, yeah.
A lot of body positioning. But yeah, I mean, he has long enough arms. He's tall enough to kind of be unguardable in a sense in the red zone. So hopefully we see that kind of start to click for the entire Chargers offense, but with Donald Parham specifically. Yeah. I can't wait to see Scott Matlock on Sunday when I'm out at the scrimmage. Chargers 6th-round defensive lineman, a guy that I'm very high on just because I think that, that you can never have enough interior pass rush. And I try to look for where that's going to come from outside of, edge rushers moving to the inside, and obviously Morgan Fox, who was a revelation in that regard last year. Yes. But he's getting some more snaps now. I want to see some souls get snatched, I guess.
Yes, indeed. I love that. I love Scott Matlock. I love the attitude ever since they put out that video of him trying to take souls and take a grown man's job. I mean, he has gotten a sack so far, at least according to Daniel Popper's notes so far in training camp. So that is definitely good to see. And yeah, just more of that, more of the same for Scott Matlock. I think the motor is real. I think the attitude is definitely there. And I feel like this is a guy that is going to be able to come in on a rotational basis and to be able to surprise some people and get some pass rush where, you probably have some guys that are not really geared for that in that particular rotation.
Yeah, he had a sack the other day in practice. He also got stood up by Jamari Sawyer in one-on-ones, and I thought, made me feel better about Jamari Sawyer, even though it's like we have no idea what Scott Matlock has at this point. But I want to see it. I'm excited to see him in pads because I haven't got to see him in pads so far. And I can't remember who on Instagram hit us up for Fan Mail Friday that said that. He looks like a cleaner version of Max Crosby, basically. But yeah, I guess there's definitely some resemblance. I mean, if you have to do with that red of hair dominating, it just hits a little bit differently. But I think the last one, the big one who we've talked a little bit about before, David, is just JT Woods. Because, hey, I know we're not going to know until we see him tackling to the ground kind of how much improvement he can make. But the other part of it is, it's like, okay, but even before that, I need to see some playmaking ability because the more playmaking you have, the more palatable your bad run defense gets.
Yeah, well, yeah, you can stomach it a lot more, right? I mean, if you're not making the tackles, but you're getting interceptions, you're getting pass breakups, then yeah, that's something you.
It's
you
not
can
the
live
Samuel
with.
Jr. theory.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're bringing the dough, then I mean, just like at work. I mean, if you're a super high performer and you slack off every once in a while, as long as you're bringing in the money, that's really what matters. That's the bottom line. And for JT Woods, I think one of the things that's kind of been an issue is, at least on one of the notes, it said on a Keelan Doss completion, safety JT Woods was late to react and created a window for Herbert, and he should have, at least according to Popper, been there to at least break that pass up or pick it off. I don't need to see read and react issues from JT Woods. That's one thing that I don't need to see. So don't stack the issues that we have to worry about here on top of the tackling. So yeah, it's a big scrimmage for JT Woods. I want to see some playmaking. I want to see the interceptions. I want to see the ball skills come to life. That is what JT Woods brings to the table. That's his number one calling card.
That's what you hope, right? I mean, that's what it was in college. But yeah, that's Daniel Popper from The Athletic, who puts out great articles and great notes, especially for the practices we can't get to.
Just every day.
For JT Woods, I mean, yeah, it's going to be tackling. That's going to be what makes or breaks if he's playable or not. And we'll see that in the preseason, and I'm excited to see it. But I want to see the other stuff right now while I can see it, because that's the stuff that you want him on the field for. And if not, maybe some of those snaps start to get eaten into from whoever wins this safety 4 spot, whether that's Raheem Lane, whether that's Mark Webb, who I think also fits in this category too, as guys, hopefully we get to see a little bit more of now that he's back in the mix and he's healthy. So it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, I think you can't wait to see more of these guys, but all of these guys at least have something to some degree to prove to the Chargers. And one guy I can't wait to see just for more reason, or, just any kind of reason, is Quentin Johnston, because everything I've seen from him week 1 has been great. But Josh Palmer's also been great, and we're going to get into our Fan Mail Friday with some questions about who is winning that battle. And also, later on, is Keenan Allen the GOAT wide receiver? Is it Lance Allworth? There's so much to get into, and we're getting to that right after this. First, though, I do need to tell you guys about Underdog Fantasy Football, because August is here, and you know what that means. The official start of fantasy football drafting month. Get championship ready for your home league by trying out Best Ball, an Underdog Fantasy exclusive, and all you have to do is go live snake draft at the beginning of the season, and then you don't have to go through waivers. There's no trades. Underdog sets your best lineup every week. I think it's truly revolutionizing everything, because I'm so busy. I can definitely relate to, hey, you make the moves and put the right players in for me. I'll be there for the draft and just see what happens, right? And all you have to do is you can try it out with Underdog's Best Ball Mania tournament. The largest fantasy football contest of all time is back, and even bigger, with $15 million of total prizes up for grabs, including an absurd $3 million. $3 million that's going to the winner of this tournament. Last year, the winner drafted their team in July, so don't wait around. Visit UnderdogFantasy.com and find them in the App Store and sign up with the promo code LOCKEDON to get your first deposit doubled up to $100. Underdog is the easiest place for you to play fantasy football, and this Best Ball thing is really, really changing the game. So maybe make sure that you guys check out Best Ball Mania for the largest fantasy football tournament ever. If you guys don't want to miss out on the biggest fantasy football tournament ever, visit UnderdogFantasy.com or find them in the App Store and sign up with the promo code LOCKEDON to get your first deposit doubled up to $100. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code LOCKEDON. All right, well, let's get to some wide receiver talk, because it is Fan Mail Friday, and that's what you guys wanted to hear about. So let's start with Colby Talbert, who asked us today, based on what we've seen in training camp so far, who is winning between Quentin Johnston versus Josh Palmer and Asante Samuel Jr. versus Jasir Taylor? So yesterday we both talked about the fact that at this point, even though it's not a done deal, Asante Samuel Jr. is winning the slot/star corner position for the Chargers. But they're still starting Jasir Taylor there in practice. Either way, we didn't talk about the second best, maybe 1A, 1B best battle so far in camp, which has been Quentin Johnston versus Joshua Palmer. And I think we know both of them are going to play, right? So let's get that out of there, because I think if I was trying to gauge who's winning this, I would say this. I would say that Josh Palmer has been more consistent. I mean, he has absolutely done everything he can to kind of fight Quentin Johnston off. Yeah. At the same time, I think Quentin Johnston has shown some things, even this early in camp, where it's going to be impossible for them to totally keep him off the field.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think with Joshua Palmer, I think he's reminding everybody that he is actually a very good route runner, a guy that works at his craft. He is very, very, very diligent. He has very strong hands, and he is making plays. Like, he is making his presence felt pretty much every single time. And I think with Quentin Johnston, it's the wow factor. It's the spectacular ability, the ability to go up and high point the football, to the toe tap catches on the sidelines, the just incredible speed that he accelerates with when he has the football in his hands. It's deceptive. You just don't expect it. He just covers so much ground. It's unbelievable. So both these guys are definitely fighting. They are showing everybody why they both deserve to be on the field for different reasons.
Yeah, and I think that if Quentin Johnston hadn't come out the way he has so far, which is super explosive, kind of showing some spectacular catchability, which is something that you didn't see as much of from him in college.
Yeah.
And also just him kind of really only filling that yak need. I mean, at least him being the only one that really can fill that. As far as guys who you're going to play in the top 4 receivers that you have between him, Palmer, Keenan Allen, and Mike Williams, I just think he's going to get on the field, but it doesn't necessarily mean he's winning the competition. I think that Josh Palmer has been the more consistent guy. he's also made some spectacular plays as well. And you can hear the kind of reverence the coaching staff has for him, and also him kind of putting the receiving unit on his back a little bit last year when he had 72 catches, right? Which they want to keep telling us over and over again, right?
Right, that we like to discount, but I mean, they're making sure that we don't.
Yeah, I mean, he led the receivers last year in catches, and you wouldn't think that necessarily, you know,
right,
with who they had out there. So Josh Palmer has been good. He's looked the best he's ever looked so far this training camp, and it's nice that you have those dudes pushing for playing time. Because
competition, it brings the best out of you.
And you're just hoping for less of a drop-off. If you are missing one of your two big guys in Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, it feels like you're in a much better position to do that this year. But Tom wants to know how many receivers the Chargers could keep, because last year, you know, we were begging for 6, we got 5. It came back and bit the Chargers badly, and you ended up using a lot of training, practice squad guys and guys who ended up being cut from most training camps in very, very important games. So let's hear what Tom has that for us.
Hey, guys. Listen, Tom Costello here. I appreciate you guys bringing us through, and I know I'm not the only one who feels this way, bringing us through the lowly months when nothing was happening. My question is kind of involved. We have a plethora of wide receivers. This young guy, Hightower, is doing well. Would they consider carrying 7 wide receivers? Because if we put him on the practice squad, he'll be taken up by somebody. Or maybe it's better to trade him if we want to get rid of him. Thanks, guys. I'm an everydayer.
Tom, thank you for being an everydayer, and the everydayers already know we will be back with you guys on Sunday night. You don't even have to wait till Monday. We'll be back with a live show Sunday night recapping the Chargers scrimmage. But thanks, Tom. I think it's a great question, and I think it's important to kind of think about how this roster has been constructed the last couple of years. I mean, the last 2 years with Brandon Staley, it's been 5 receivers, right? And one of them has been a primarily special teams type of player, right? Yeah. Last year, it was DeAndre Carter. This year, it's Darius Davis, who are going to be mostly special teams guys, but also going to be listed as a receiver on the roster and might have to get used like we saw last year. But we're just fighting for 6. Tom wants 7, David, any way you see it.
No, I'm sorry. There's no way that they're going to have 7 wide receivers.
Just break his heart like that. And
I got to be honest with him. I mean, hey, just with my customers at the store, I got to be honest with you up front. I just think there is absolutely no way that the Chargers are going to carry 7 wide receivers. I do, however, feel like they are going to learn from their mistakes of the years before, and they will carry 6 wide receivers. But yeah, John Hightower is making some plays, but also I would say let's pump the brakes a little bit. It's 1 week in training camp. There's still a long ways to go between now and when that roster gets cut down to 53. So let's wait a little bit. Let's let it all unfold before we make any kind of decisions like that.
That's just rude. I mean, that's rude. David talking like that to an everydayer. I mean,
yes.
I don't think it's getting carried away with John Hightower. I think there's different issues, which is mainly, okay, when is Jalen Guyton coming back?
Yes.
Right? Because Jalen Guyton is presumably 6th in this hypothetical. He's your 6th receiver, right? Keenan Allen, Josh Palmer, Mike Williams, Quentin Johnston, Darius Davis, all locks.
Yes.
Those 5 will make it no matter what. Jalen Guyton, we felt pretty close to a lock to, right? I mean, he would be a surprise if he was fully healthy and out there this entire time. Yet, we still haven't seen him. He had a very serious ACL injury in week 3 last year. He's recovering from that. When can he get back out there? When he does come back, I think the problem is between him and John Hightower, I don't know how much special teams usage you're going to get out of them, because the Chargers, if they've been clear about one thing, it's like they need you to play special teams if you're going to be a receiver at the end of this depth chart, right? We know Darius Davis brings that. Jalen Guyton doesn't really bring that, right?
They even got Quentin Johnston playing special teams too.
Sure, everyone's playing special teams, but I also think, though, David, that having John Hightower and Jalen Guyton is just, it could be a little bit redundant. I mean, they have those guys on there as field stretchers. That's the way they'd be used. It'd be hard to imagine them keeping both of those guys.
It's not happening. Yeah, that's a situation to where it's one or the other. I mean, they fill the same type of role that, you know, the Chargers are looking for. That's that speed, stretch the field, go deep type of guy. I mean, it's going to be Jalen Guyton or it's going to be John Hightower. It will not be both.
Yeah, it seems like they would be filling the same role, but Alvin on Twitter doesn't think so. He says, are the Chargers putting their fastest receivers at the bottom of the depth chart? This is David's arch nemesis on Twitter, Alvin. Alvin, thank you for contributing to this Fan Mail Friday. No, I mean, they're putting their best receivers on top. I don't think anyone thinks that Josh Palmer's not a better receiver than Jalen Guyton, or that Keenan Allen's not a better receiver than Darius Davis. That's just how it works out. The best guys are at the top of the depth chart, but it doesn't mean that the fast guys won't have a role, especially in certain packages. especially to try to stretch the field a little bit. So I think, 1 and 2, we know 3A and 3B right now, Quentin Johnston and Joshua Palmer. The speedy guys, though, I mean, there's definitely a role for them to get on the field. It depends on kind of what kind of field stretcher Quentin Johnston ends up being when they want him to try to do those things, or if they need someone like Jalen Guyton or a John Hightower to get out there. But John Hightower's done basically anything you can to impress so far, and he looks like even more than just a deep threat. I mean, he really struggled with drops in his career before this, but there's a reason he was a 5th-round pick at one point, 4th or 5th-round pick, sure. Right? He has some skill. He's a low 4.4 guy. I know you want him out in the field, Alvin, but it's going to be hard to get some snaps away from Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. But that's also the problem, right? We've seen the Chargers just really, really lack that dynamic. And just when you have all guys who are slower dudes, there can be problems. And we'll see how it kind of works out. I do think that Quentin Johnston definitely, and just the new scheme is going to alleviate some of that. But we have more to get into, including Keenan Allen. Is he the best Chargers wide receiver of all time? That's be hard to do when you play for the same franchise as a Hall of Famer like Lance Allworth. So we're going to get into that coming up right after this. Thank you guys and everyone who contributed to this Fan Mail Friday. We appreciate you guys, and make sure you guys are hitting us up on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call us at Locked On LAC. But we have questions from all different kinds of places. We have voicemails today, Twitter questions, YouTube questions, Instagram questions, all sorts. So make sure you guys are hitting us up on all of our social media so you can get your questions on these Fan Mail shows.
From everywhere.
Absolutely. And that's just for today. Everydayers know we'll be back with you guys because we are the only daily Chargers podcast out there, including Sunday, a scrimmage live show afterwards to recap that. Very excited, baby. Hopefully, to seeing you guys out there and seeing a lot of these players who are in battles and a lot of these young guys. So I'm very excited about it. And just to see, Justin Herbert throwing to Quentin Johnston. But
always.
Let's talk about a different wide receiver. Wide receiver 1 for the Chargers. Keenan Allen, the highest rated Madden player on the Chargers offense, which is not a conversation for today, but Justin Herbert being less than a 90, I mean that's a pretty wild thing.
It's just so ridiculous.
It's a wild accusation.
Don't get me started. But
we got this from Darrell Noble on Instagram, who DM'd us and asked us, where does Keenan Allen rank on your guys' list of all-time Chargers receivers? For me, he's number 1, but would love to hear what y'all have to say. So this is going to really separate the newer and the older Chargers fans. So I wish I could say, Keenan's easily the best wide receiver of the last 50 years, but that would be excluding one Lance Allworth, a Hall of Fame receiver who, let's go through the ranks. 2nd in receiving yards, 2nd in receiving touchdowns. Both of those, he's only behind Antonio Gates. So he leads.
Shout out to Antonio Gates, by the way. He's just boom.
He owns everything.
On top of every list.
Yeah, he owns everything. Most ever yards in a season, 1602. He owns that by more than 200 yards. He's by himself in that regard. And he was playing in 14-game seasons, right? But David, in modern history, Keenan Allen is coming for those records. He's only a few hundred. He's 297 behind Lance Allworth in receiving yards. He'll get that this year.
Yeah, easy.
So he's going to be 2nd in receiving yards, 1st amongst all receivers all time. He's already 1st in receptions by all receivers all time, right? Just wide receivers, not including Antonio Gates. Even though he's 159 behind Antonio Gates, there's no certainty that if he played out this and next season in his contract that he couldn't get to that, right? That would be averaging 80 catches the next 2 seasons.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, receiving touchdowns. Keenan Allen is 4th, and he's 4 behind Gary Garrison. He'll probably get that this year too. Yeah, but Lance Allworth has 81, right? So he's not catching Lance Allworth in touchdowns. No. David, one of them's a Hall of Famer, but it's hard not to go with the guy, that's really been the best receiver since we've been alive.
Yeah, I think if you're asking me if is this the best wide receiver of our generation, definitely I would say that. But, just looking at the numbers right now, as we are talking right now, I still have to say it's Lance Allworth. And it's just because it's the yards per catch, it's the receptions,
yards. Lance Allworth, 19.4 average yards per catch. Keenan Allen, 11.7. That's a pretty staggering difference.
Yeah, just a big play machine. And then just the touchdown difference, it's staggering. That's a big, and honestly, that's probably one of the things when you evaluate Keenan Allen's career that you could say that is probably a little bit of a detractor, is just not as many touchdowns as you would expect from a guy who has gotten 100+ catches 5+ times in his career. So I think that's
but he'd
just
still
right now
be
where
second in franchise history amongst all wide receivers if he gets 4 this year, right? So like, you can knock him for the touchdowns, and he's played more seasons now than Lance Allworth did. I mean, with the injuries, it's close, but Lance Allworth was also playing, 14-game seasons, and he had some injuries of his own. So it's a preference thing. You care more about who's going to lead this team in franchise history in receptions and receiving yards, or is it just touchdowns and average yards per catch? Because that's really what you're arguing here. Because Keenan Allen at the end of this season is going to be first in Chargers wide receivers in multiple things. He also has 4 different 100-catch seasons as a Charger. He has, multiple 1,000-yard seasons. He has the second most receiving yards ever in a season with 1,396. So Lance Allworth, all time, it would be hard to argue, but like Keenan Allen's the Chargers' GOAT receiver of my lifetime. So that's totally fine with me. Let's get to John Lloyd who has a question, who asked on YouTube, right? That last one was Instagram. This one's from YouTube at, Locked On Chargers YouTube channel. What are we going to do if Trey Pipkins is really hurt? Foster Sorrell? Why can't they realize how important depth is on the offensive line? It's so frustrating. So, David, I think this is a fair question. I want to get to this one quickly. It'd be really, really scary if the next option is Foster Sorrell.
Yes, it would. And Foster Sorrell did do some work this offseason, so hopefully, this is a guy that is developing and has gotten better over the offseason. But obviously if Trey Pipkins is out for like a considerable amount of time, then it's time to worry a little bit. But we're only talking about 4 or 5 days of missed practice, and just by the tone of Brandon Staley talking about it, he expects him to be back in practice soon. And for people out there that are frustrated about it, Brandon Staley has no incentive to provide anybody any information on injuries right now. It's just
I don't think anyone's upset about that, though. I think people are upset that the next best option is Foster Sorrell right now, which I think is a very, very valid concern. We'll see in the preseason and even the scrimmage, right, how far he's come. But, think about it this way. The Chargers have had a starting tackle miss at least 14 games for 2 straight seasons. Last year, it's Rashawn Slater. Before that, it was Brian Bulaga, who missed a ton of these games the season before that. Yeah. Even before that, you go back to Russell Okung and having crazy, medical scares, and then he missed almost the entire season. It was Sam Tevy. So, we've seen tackles have to come in and fill in for pretty much the whole season. And it's been guys like, Storm Norton, who shall not be named. We've seen this come back to bite them so many times.
I think definitely one guy that makes you feel just a little bit better about that situation is Jamari Sawyer. Just his ability, what he did as left tackle last year. Obviously, a lot of moving parts in that situation, but at least you saw him perform. Get thrust into that situation and perform pretty well as a left tackle. So
problem is before Jamari Sawyer was coming off the bench, right? Yeah. So it was an easier move to throw him out there when he wasn't going. You're not going to have to fill another starting spot. We don't know how they feel about Brendan Hymas having to fill in a guard. We don't know how they feel about, obviously Will Clapp might be in the mix for that. And then you have Jordan McFadden, who's brand new. So we'll see kind of how it happens. But maybe there's more options than that. I think it's still a legitimate scare, legitimate concern, but I don't think Trey Pipkins is very hurt at all. So it's something that we'll have to talk about, I'm sure, at some point this season, unfortunately. Let's get to a tier. A tier calls in, a tier gets on the show. That's just how it goes.
Mr. Jorgmeyer, Mr. Wade, this is a tier. I love you, my boys. Mr. Jorgmeyer, I have a question. All the draft about Zion Johnston was coming out. They talked about he could be a possibly backup center in the future for Justin Herbert. Do you think the staff and the team made a mistake playing him guard when he should be backing up Corey Linsley? Let me know what you think. I love you. Bye-bye.
All right, Mr. Jorgmeyer, you first.
Yeah, no, they definitely did not make a mistake. He got drafted as a guard in the first round. Maybe the mistake was playing him on the right side to start. I think maybe that was a little bit of a mistake. But as far as, him maybe turning into a center, I think that's for, the life after Corey Linsley.
Yeah, Corey Linsley's still under contract for a couple more seasons after this season. So he's going to be, you don't want Zion Johnston on the bench a tier. What are we talking about? You need him out on the field. I get what you're saying. Hey, maybe that's something where they find a guard they feel really good about going forward, and they say maybe we can see what Zion Johnston can do at center. But I don't know. You need him out there starting for you right now, and let's see how he does going back to left guard. Let's see if he can even play guard, right? He's moving to the other side. We expect him to be better, but this will be a big season for him. We're hoping that he can take a pretty big leap. But hey, if you have him and Jamari Sawyer as above average guards for you for the next 5 seasons, you're feeling really, really good about that. Both those guys got such meaningful experience last year. But that's going to wrap things up for today's show. And make sure you never miss the show. Go subscribe to the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and also follow the show for free wherever you get your podcast from. You can also call into the voicemail line at 323-524-7924 and get your 30-second Chargers voicemail in there. That is, you say you're an everydayer. That's a very good way to get on the show as well. I'm just saying. You can also find the show every day on our social media. Hit us up at LockedOnLAC on Twitter or X. You can find me at Dan Talk Sports and David Drogmeyer on Twitter at DroTalkSD. And you can also find us on Instagram at Locked On Chargers and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. But scrimmage, Sunday night. Be here for the live show after. We will talk to you guys then. Until then, take it easy and go Bolts.